Oh. Okay. Are you sufficiently bored at the moment? Yes, because some of you have left.
Sufficiently bored at the moment. Yes, because some of you.
My guest has not shown. He said that he has very spotty Wi-Fi. So I'm assuming that is what's gone down. But we can wait a few more minutes and see if he shows up. How is everyone? Creepy clown girl, I hope things are going well for you. Oh dear. This might be a complete flop. But that's okay too. Oh, let's see. All right. Do we want to start? There's two people here because I'm sure I'm the third. But we can start if you would like. This is going to be a really short stream. Oh well. I can always cancel it too. Let's see. Well, I guess I will go ahead and answer the questions as best I can from what I've studied. And we'll call it a day. I'm thinking about starting other YouTube channels in other areas of life that I might go to. I don't know. That's neither. That was a complete non sequitur. Sorry. That's what happens when I sit here talking to myself. All right. Keep calm and soldier on, right? Everything's bound to go wrong in life. Let's see. All right. The first couple questions I have down is from Papa Wolf and Krampus and Bleaken. What creates a skinwalker? Are they brought to life through the belief of them? And Daniel M. says, what's their origin? Is there a first skinwalker? What about conception, transformation, reproduction? Well, I will tell you what I have learned. Late Cap has better information than I do on this. I just go from what I have learned, whether, some of it might not be true or not. But from what I understand, the Skinwalkers are they're basically people that make a pact with evil, with demons, with the devil, whatever. To gain the ability to shapeshift and other evil things. in order to do this, and these I read out of some folklore archives at the university close to me that was collected probably at least 100 years ago, if not more, from Navajos at the time. And a young boy who was interviewed was asked to become a skinwalker by his father. And his father told him that he had to pick a family member to kill in order to complete the pact to become one. And it was him and his father and his sister and his mother and I don't know what other extended family. But he picked his mother, and his dad told him, you can't pick your mother, you have to pick your sister. And he didn't want to kill his sister, but apparently his mother was already a member of the coven, you could call it. They are either singular skinwalkers or they do belong in covens with a leader. Let's see here. No comments. Nothing. Okay. The first skinwalker, from what I can I'm sorry, you're going to get a lot of ums because I'm doing this off the top of my head and what I remember, and we'll see what we can do from there. The skinwalker was first used as a war weapon and was accepted by the tribe as a necessary evil in times of terrible conflict. They would, let's see here. Here we go. Hi, how are you?
Hello.
We've got Late
Hello.
Cap here. Nice to see you.
Hello.
So glad you're here.
Sorry for the inconvenience. I had to download it real quick.
Oh, okay. No problem. No problem. I'm so glad you're here. How are things going for you?
It's clear weather, so I should have clear signal.
Good
all day
deal.
today.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, Late Cap, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in this or anything like that?
Well, hello everyone. My name is Danon Tohani. I am from the Navajo Nation, specifically the western side of the Navajo Nation. I recently got into it about 2 years ago. I started documenting paranormal things that happen because most Navajos around our reservation don't feel comfortable speaking about paranormal or skinwalker stuff. If you ask them in a setting, like an interview setting, sometimes they won't describe all the events. But once you become, I guess, like kind of like friends with them, they'll kind of tell more details about what they experience and what, like kind of like how, like with personal feelings and stuff and their problems. And I find interesting just most of the talk about skinwalkers and the paranormal stuff we have around our reservation too. Our town is fairly small. What else? Our town's fairly small. During the boarding school days, during the back long time ago days, they used to have mass graveyards everywhere. And the town I'm in, most of the town was covered in graveyards because of children dying in the boarding schools, just basically bad health back in those days. And nowadays, we've kind of modernized. We built roads, and I think they took some of the bodies, exhumed it out, the bodies that were inside those graves to build roads. But there is still some that are unmarked, hundreds that are unmarked. And there's many undocumented deaths back in those days that were covered up too. And some of those have like residual energy around the town. So sometimes people will see skinwalkers. In another part of the town, people will see shadow people. In another part of town, people will hear ghost children, children playing. Sometimes people will see old old traditional Navajos dressed up in just skinwear and all this like buckskin. How Navajos used to dress back in those days. It's just a lot of paranormal stuff going around
Oh
lately.
wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's well, it's awesome to see. It's really sad and tragic for the ghosts that are there, obviously. I know
yeah,
there was a boarding school for Native Americans over the mountain from where I live. It was a large one, and I've heard a few terrible, terrible tales of, what they've gone through and everything. So, would they ship them home for burial? Is that why? Or are these people
no.
children that died
Um,
down there?
for our boarding school, our time started after the Navajo Long Walk, which took place between 1864 and 67.
Uh huh.
Uh, Before then, we were just scattered bands, scattered families around the whole reservation.
Oh, okay.
But once the long walk happened, we finally congregated together, and we I think that's where most of the stories today come from. But
Okay.
once we congregated, some of the people who lost like probably say lost most of their families, be widowed, widowed husbands, widowed wives, children who had no parents, grandparents who had no families to take care of them. They sort of congregated and stayed together and made I guess what you would call villages,
Right.
type things. Yeah. And from there, we kind of multiplied, and uh, the Navajo Nation kind of filled up more with more natives coming out. And they built more towns, connected it with more roads. Um, then after, say, move forward 100, maybe 60 years,
Uh huh.
60 years to 100 years forward, that's when assimilation, say, move came in
Huh.
for the boarding
Uh
schools.
huh.
They would take children away from their parents. Sometimes the parents, again, would be widowed just by themselves. Sometimes these parents would be gone, dead from poor health. Um, these children would sometimes be living with their grandparents at the same time, too. And they would take those children away and put them in the boarding schools. Once the boarding school assimilation was happening, some of these children would try to run away, go home.
Right.
Some would go missing. Some would die. Some would die trying to escape. What else was there? There's a lot of things with the boarding school
Mm hmm.
that that probably they don't probably tell.
Yeah.
They used to have U.S. cavalry soldiers, Union soldiers. They used to guard these boarding schools back in the day. Probably like a liaison officer.
Mm hmm.
When these children would escape, they would be punished, put in dungeons type things,
Oh.
left in the dark. These children would sometimes die in those places because they're so sad, heartbroken. Some would be malnourished, bad health again,
Mm
and
hmm.
they would die. And when they would die, there's a story of some elders would tell of them when they were little kids. They would A priest or one of the school officials would take them down to the bottom where the basement is, and they would have them dispose of the child's body,
Oh my
or they would
gosh.
have them, yeah, they would have them dig up unmarked grave and just throw them in late at night. Sometimes they don't have to do it late at night because it was so was like a common thing for them at the boarding school. So they would just throw the bodies in an unmarked grave,
Mm hmm.
and I think that's what kind of like the residual energy people are feeling around town.
Right.
Just
Right.
yeah, like it wasn't properly buried. They weren't properly buried in a way. that they could rest in peace.
And and the children, I'm sure they lived in such agony that those emotions would hold them to the area, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Yeah. I know the boarding school that I mentioned in Brigham City, it was known long after it stopped being used as the boarding school to be incredibly, incredibly haunted. So yeah, I know
Yeah.
that, goes on all sorts of, things. And the whole point of it was to kind of train out the culture and kind of
Yeah.
what try to make them act like Caucasians and all of that
Yeah.
is
It's
the whole
the
thing.
assimilation.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes. So yeah, well, it sounds like you've got quite a bit to uncover down there.
Another thing too is when these kids would go to the boarding school, their parents would try to camp outside sometimes, and
Oh,
most times these officer soldiers are like the people guarding the boarding schools because they had to keep the parents away from not trying to keep them kidnapping their kid back.
oh my
They would
gosh.
sometimes go out there and severely beat these parents, and sometimes they would be so bruised they would still stay there, keep on camping so they can stay close to their child.
Oh, that's so
Uh,
heartbreaking.
yeah, there's a lot of things they don't tell in between.
Right.
Sometimes murder was involved to get them removed from the grounds
Mm-hmm.
because they kept coming back,
Mm.
and sometimes they would be so severely beaten that they would die just there.
Oh
And
my.
again, that's where the unmarked graves come in again.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah,
There's a lot of history that's been, well, quite literally whitewashed, and
yeah,
it's good to learn those things so that we can not repeat them, in different situations for sure. Things like that really need to come to light. So,
yeah. After the assimilation, most Navajos in those times were stripped of their pride. Like they feared to do their culture, the
mm-hmm.
dancing, the chanting, the ceremonies,
Right.
and in those times they had to revolve their world around their children to to keep them teaching, to bring up the next upcoming of their teachings.
Right. Kind of done in secret
Yeah,
to keep the traditions and the religion and just the whole identity going. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, and again, it connects back to the if their children were taken and they're widowed, then you have nothing to live for. It's just because your child's taken, and you would
Right.
want to camp outside the boarding school to hope to see your child, get a
Oh,
glimpse of your child, even if you can.
right. Right. Oh gosh. I
Yeah,
couldn't even imagine. That's so such a horrible thing. Oh wow. Oh wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
All of that gives off a residual energy too, like paranormal, like just residual energy. Probably them repeating the process over again in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
That people here today in those houses, that's what they probably see. It's just residual energy of them repeating the same thing over,
Oh
just feeling
yeah.
sad, trying to connect to their child. Yeah,
Right. Right. That kind of emotion could very easily be, recorded into the landscape. I know that's one theory anyway for ghosts that are,
yeah.
the residual energy. So tell us your name again, because some people didn't catch it quite.
Oh, my name is Danon Tohani. My first name is kind of just morphed in when I was born.
Oh,
My mother just made up the name, thought it was nice. But Tohani, my last name in Navajo, it's Tohane, and
okay.
it's water flows underneath the ground. Uh,
Oh,
I guess for my people, where that last name resides is a place where like natural spring water underneath the ground
mm-hmm.
in the desert. Yeah, that's where my last name originated from.
Oh,
And there's
that's
probably
awesome.
hundreds of other people who share the same last name as me,
Uh-huh.
but we probably won't be related.
Oh, okay.
That's that's the meaning of my last name.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, do you want to, should we get started with a few questions here?
Oh yeah. Do that.
Okay. Um, Papa Wolf und Krampus und Bleaken asked, what creates a skinwalker? And are they brought to life through the belief of them? I guess that would be kind of a tulpa, but they're not that. I'll let you go ahead and explain that.
How they are created is kind of debatable, even amongst modern paranormalists today. Some say they're physical people, like hermits, people who live out in the rural areas, avoiding just modernizing. Instead of modernizing, they just want to stay out there. And there's also a paranormal side, like a supernatural type thing. But in Navajo culture, the way it was explained to me by my grandfather, uh, they do sand paintings. They draw in the sand, and the colors they get are kind of scattered hundreds of miles about the land. So you would have like yellow, white, red. All those have powers. Like when you paint them, you paint them in a certain way. Then the belief is that if you believe enough into changing into a skinwalker, or having the mindset, like how do I say it? An unfiltered an unfiltered mind to change into one without without what did I say? Without without the distractions in your mind.
Oh, uh-huh.
They would roll around in the sand painting as the medicine man is chanting, or whoever is running their ceremony, their evil ceremony. And with the chanting, it kind of reverberates in the sky, in the air, enough to make them feel like they can have the power to do change and stuff.
Okay. So it's kind of like a spell, and the pattern of the sand painting kind of
Yeah.
is kind of that
there's a
spell
difference.
along with the shaman.
Yeah, and a Hopi version, Hopis have skinwalkers too.
Oh, okay.
In their version, the way Navajos do hoop dances, if you ever look up on YouTube hoop dances,
Uh-huh.
the people who dance, the natives, Navajos who dance with the hoops, there's an evil version to that I haven't known about yet, but there's elders out there who know the evil version of a hoop dance.
Oh.
And it is said in the Hopi culture that when they want to change into an animal or a hybrid of human and animal mix, they would put the hoop around their ankles, and they would jump into the hoop. They spin the hoop around them while they jump.
Uh-huh.
And when the hoop goes past them around them, they change into an animal, and the hoop just falls on the ground, and that's how they go about.
Oh.
There's many versions amongst Apaches, Zunis, Paiute, Cheyenne, Tohono O'odham. There's a lot of different versions of how they shapeshift and transform. But skinwalkers aren't only isolated to Navajos. There's actually many versions out there that other natives just don't know about, because this urban legend has caught so much momentum that they believe it's just Navajo skinwalkers, shapeshifters that can shapeshift.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there's a
shape.
lot. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So, I mean, you can find shapeshifter legends all over the world. The Berserkers, the Vikings, across Asia, everywhere you can find legends of shapeshifters. And I think it's obviously very, very deep in our, subconscious that that's a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, and you talked about how they're. Let's see, because I'm looking at the next question, and they ask how do they become and transform and all that. So and
Yeah,
reproduce. So there are, I guess, recruited by other skinwalkers, possibly.
I have two versions of like a physical version. Yeah, the hermit, just an outcast person who scolds modern society and stuff.
Uh huh.
Back in the 70s, when Route 66 was being built, uh, people would drive through and they would see these Navajos on the side of the road, and I guess it was kind of like not a custom thing to see someone dressed so poorly, like
Oh,
probably wearing wools or probably wearing deer hide skin to protect them from the sun. But I think it was like not a common thing for them to see, so
yeah.
they kind of that momentum kind of built up to the legend of the Skinwalker that someone can transform, shapeshift into an animal,
Uh
a
huh.
physical person shaping into an animal,
Right. Right.
and yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
there's
That's interesting. That it's that fear of the unknown, that
yeah,
leads to that. That's awesome.
yeah. Even in those times too, uh, when Navajos were modernizing from the 40s to the 80s, it wasn't common for us too to see hermits because we knew they were out there
Mm-hmm.
who, who would live off the land, growing their food, herding their own animal, multiplying them, living off the land and stuff.
Right.
Uh, it would kind of be scary to even come across one out in the middle of nowhere while you're herding sheep too, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
just not. It's just usually they would avoid people and even avoid roads. They would avoid trying to even have any encounters with Navajos who have houses like the square houses,
Mm-hmm.
vehicles, modernizing the way they see them. They would try to avoid any Navajo that would seem like they modernized.
Okay.
But yeah, wasn't uncommon for us to see them out there while we were hunting, herding sheep, or just being out there.
Mm-hmm.
But we knew they were out there, hermits living
Yeah.
out there. But
Just kind of.
today, modernly, it's very scarce to hear of hermits living out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure if there's any more out there. There
Yeah.
probably is, but there's a lot of stories, even in amongst Navajo culture, that we lost during the Navajo Long Walk, assimilation, and all those other stuff. And it wasn't only recently, until like 40 years, we started documenting our stories, our creation stories, our language and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and what whatever uh, old knowledge hermits know, whether that they had families, like they multiplied and passed it down.
Mm-hmm.
They probably know old medicine ways we probably lost in our culture.
Right. Right. They kind
Yeah,
of clung to preserving the old ways. It seems.
yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Um, let's see. Uh, Another question is: was there a first Skinwalker? I don't know if you
Um,
know that or.
it's kind of a complex because today the Skinwalker today is kind of being mitigated to not sound so scary, sound so serious that they how do I say they kind of turned it into cartoons so children can learn their culture at the same time while also learning not about the Skinwalker. And yeah, so today in our modern stories for children growing up, they learn these stories in Navajo classes. They take, but they show stories, video stories of a coyote and the animals and stuff. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
cartoon. But from what my grandfather told me is that coyote is actually Skinwalker in those stories
Okay.
because he's the only one in all those cartoons and stories and stories. And stories. Uh, he's the only one who can talk to these animals and find out what's the problem with them. Because in all these stories, he helps them in some way, but he also deceives them for something he wants in return.
Right.
And it's only until the end of when they get what they want that they find out Coyote took something from them. And there's a lot of stories, probably 6 episodes for these children's stories
Oh,
involving
okay.
Coyote.
Right, right. He's kind of the trickster god, isn't he?
Yeah, in our culture, he's kind of like the trickster, like just the bad omen side of
Okay.
everything. But there's also what they don't tell no more is there's actually 2 versions of a Skinwalker, and those 2 versions are actually 2 genders. There's a male Skinwalker who is black, and there's a female Skinwalker who is gray.
Oh,
There's a duality story with each story told among Navajo culture, but it's more complex. It's for like adults instead of children,
right.
and it's more of a complex story. And I'm pretty sure more elders probably know about these stories, but they only tell them when it comes to concern, like when it matters, like when someone is going through stuff they don't understand. This is when these elders would tell these certain stories for them. But most stories today, uh, back then, they had 2 versions to each story, and it was up to us to see how we define them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in our creation story, we had a first man, first woman. Their duality, first man was he had kind of like, I guess you would say, a burning light, just a bright light, and he had with him a crystal to see in the night, and with his light it would reflect out into the darkness so he can see.
Okay.
And first woman was born of flame, like kind of fire type thing, not
Uh-huh.
not no ambient light like the first man, just fire. And she had with her a turquoise and with the abalone shell from the ocean. And with that turquoise, it too burned a bright color. And the duality is when they were first created, Skinwalker was with first. The male Skinwalker was with the first man, and the female Skinwalker was with the uh, first woman. And in the creation, they had to find each other in the darkness in the world. And
Okay.
once they found each other, they created many elements, elemental type stuff, deities. They brought forth beings, and with all this, the animals they created, they had to take parts from the Skinwalker because he had all these abilities, sort of say. And when as they were creating animals, they were taking more from just the Skinwalker, and I guess the Skinwalker was feeling cheated out that they were using them instead of making it themselves,
Okay.
like bringing it forth themselves. But it's like losing a part of yourself to better the world and types of stuff. And after a while, they didn't like that so much that they started how I would say influencing negative things into the world for the animals. So the animals they created in the dark would become the predator animals today that hunt at night. And the Skinwalker influenced the predator animals to start killing each other, kind of like an extinction type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was their way to get back at the first man, first woman for taking all these things off of him to create these beings. So they decided to bring forth a sun, the sun in the sky. So, or was it the sun? I think it was the sun. They brought forth the sun, or was it the moon? One of them they brought forth to bring and guard the animals so they could see see the skinwalkers so they don't lose their abilities to live on the land.
Okay.
So yeah, they created like a watcher type thing.
Uh-huh.
And when the uh, when we merged into the second world with this light they created to help protect the animals, they also brought forth animals that couldn't see, like the predator animals. When it gets really dark, when the light goes around the world,
Uh-huh.
then that's when Skinwalker would come out again and hurt these animals that couldn't see at night, like the first set of animals.
Okay.
And yeah, again, first man, first woman. This time they created deities. There's a whole bunch of stories, uh, not hundreds, probably tens, probably different versions of stories of what these deities, of what they mean, how they work in this world. But these deities, in some way, help the animals, the second set of animals who couldn't help themselves, and they took more parts from the Skinwalker. They both Skinwalkers actually, and the deities gave it to the first man, first woman, and then whatever abilities they took, they didn't know what to do with because it wasn't their abilities to hone, their own abilities to adopt. So they decided to congregate all the animals, any elementals, any beings out there in the world. They all met in one spot to bring forth the human being. And with this, the Skinwalker got jealous again because they're creating another being from him, and it was a human being. And this time, the animals all pitched in parts for themselves to create this human being.
Oh, I like
And
that.
yeah, there's more stories of what animals contributed to create the human being.
Uh-huh.
But one story I heard is rabbits had long ears, and they took a portion of their ears off to give to the human being so we could have ears on our side. And that's one thing the Skinwalker didn't like too, was because the rabbit gave his offering that the Skinwalker was made of to the human being, and that's just kind of like resentment type thing. And
Right.
they create the perfect human being and all this other stuff. And this is where uh, more negative things come in with the Skinwalker. This time he was tempting human being because we can think for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
They gave us the power to think for ourselves. These deities, the first man, the first woman, it was a power they gave to us was to think for ourselves. And Skinwalker saw this and he decided to corrupt human beings. And again, extinction happened. Like some sort of extinction type event happened, and these first man, first woman needed to leave this world, second world they had created, for a third world, a blue world. And I think this is where they created
Mm-hmm.
the sky and the sun. And the way they created the sun, I think, was they had first man and first woman had to sacrifice their crystals and their glowing light. The first man's crystal, his brightness burning bright, and the second woman's fire and her turquoise and shell to create the sun. So once they sacrificed themselves to create the sun, all that was left was just deities and human beings at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Skinwalker again attempted to deceive all beings and types, but it was the deities who helped us this time. And the way they had to help us was again sacrificing themselves, and they would have to leave this world to the human beings. And this was a kind of like a training step in the creation story from the first time they were created.
Uh-huh.
Was they were trying to teach the human beings how to live with the world, how to live with the animals they created, but at the same time they were sacrificing themselves so Skinwalker won't deceive them and corrupt them. And that's was it and that was one thing Skinwalker didn't like too, was they were doing all these things for human beings, something they don't know much about. They were wondering, like, type of why would why would God sacrifice themselves for humans and type stuff.
Right.
And yeah, and they
Just
didn't he didn't like that in some sort of way. And what else was they didn't like that in some sort of way. So the deities in our story, they bring forth a no they bring forth uh like a division between us and whatever evil was out there at the time, in all the time the world was created.
uh-huh.
So we were sort of isolated for a time, and this is where the story this kind of splits off into a sub story of male and female uh, in isolation going after each other, like bickering back and forth, saying one could live without the other. And this is where Skinwalker again came in after being absent for so long, as when they were isolated from the evil in the outside world. But he tempted, he taught, I guess you would say, how to make toys type things. And how can I say this? This this part of the story is, I guess you would say, how people like would sexually satisfy themselves with items.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Got the picture there.
yeah. But at the time, everything was sacred. The fruits, the vegetables, everything was sacred. That had a purpose. But Skinwalker taught them another purpose for him, like for pleasure, self pleasure. But when they did that, after a while, they started creating monsters. Monsters were being born out of these people
Uh-huh.
that roamed the land. And this was Skinwalker's way of getting back again, because they cut the human beings off from the evil world before, so he tempted them to bring forth another set of evil. And this kind of differs off a little, and kind of confuses me in this part, is because a deity who was with one of on the male side during the great separation between male and female, uh, committed murder, and these deities and human beings didn't know how to, I guess you would say, how to punish uh, a deity for killing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so everyone was bickering, like, how do we punish this deity for killing another deity? And it was sacred not to kill things that had a purpose. So one of them had an idea to go find the female Skinwalker, the opposing side to the black Skinwalker. I guess you would say there's like uh, benevolent Skinwalker,
Uh-huh.
the good side of them. They went forth to find that Skinwalker, and she, or I guess that Skinwalker, uh, uh, brought a way for them to make judgment, but it was also a way for them to trick human beings again. So Skinwalker lied that they could punish this deity, but it had to be as uh, by chance, or kind of like a gamble type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Skinwalker took all these beings at the time to a lake that is now dried up, that we have here on the reservation. But this lake, um, he told them, they told them, the human beings, that if this rock should sink in the lake, uh, people and beings will die. They would transfer over to another world. I guess you would say the spirit world, because it wasn't created at the time. And everybody agreed, because they didn't know what to do they didn't know how to deal judgment to the deity, and this was a way for Skinwalker to trick them again. So they went about into the lake to drop the rock, and the rock floated to the bottom of the lake, and the Skinwalker declared that death should now roam the land. And everybody, I guess, kind of at the last moment, kind of thought like, what did we just do? Like, what did we just do? Did we just make a big mistake? And yeah, and the lake opened up and drained into the earth, and Skinwalker took this deity and he put the deity down in the lake. And Skinwalker said, if anybody commits kind of like I guess you would say a sin, just a general sin like murder, killing people out of jealousy and type stuff, that you would go down into this place, this dark world, and be where the same place this deity is at. And that's when everybody kind of knew it was real, that death can happen now. So they started females and the males that separated at the time started coming back together, started finally coming back to the old ways. And there was another sub part of the story I didn't tell, that the deities were trying to get the Navajos to go back to their old ways, and it was kind of a trick both ways on the side of the Skinwalker to trick both deities.
Okay.
Both the deities and the humans.
Right.
And yeah, and death was the ultimate mistake that they made at that time. And after Skinwalker left with the judgment he made, all the animals, all the people, the human beings, the deities, they started finding new ways to live better, so they don't meet death. They don't go down in that place, down in the dark hole.
Right.
But after some time passed, they forgot about the time Skinwalker taught them about the pleasure side of the objects and stuff, that these monsters started being born in human forms. Again, Skinwalker tricked them in that part, and these monsters started being born from these people, from the Navajos, and they started roaming the land. And these monsters, there's like a lot of them in different regions. There's many versions of how people tell them, but these monsters are also told in the children version of our creation story. Yeah, and these monsters were created with tricks and stuff. And again, Skinwalker took pleasure in that he brought forth, I guess, turmoil amongst the world.
Right. Just kind of
Yeah.
as much mayhem as he can cause. It sounds like. Someone asked, let's see, I've lost where it was. Are Skinwalkers always evil?
Again, there's like benevolent forms and malevolent forms of them.
Okay.
Hopis believe there's more benevolent forms than evil forms of them.
That's comforting.
Yeah. But I guess would say, since they aren't used to that type of seeing a scary type thing, they would think it's evil and type stuff.
Right.
But,
Something
and hope, yeah.
strange is, you're not going to trust it, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. In Hopi culture, they have a process to go about to see if it is benevolent or malevolent, and it's kind of playing with paranormal type stuff. And in our culture, it's taboo to alter or to even try to try to mess with paranormal stuff. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay. Let's see. A clock strikes 3. She asked, "What should you do if you encounter a skinwalker?"
Ooh. Um. From what I've researched and collectively have information on, it's kind of a 1 in a million to see one,
Uh-huh.
but they are out there, and it is kind of scary if you do come across them. But I guess in most ways, the way they are, the way you can sense their presence is, I guess you would in Catholic ways with uh demonic presences type thing. And oh, I wrote it down. Oh well. But we have consecrated items we are given when we're born
Oh,
that are passed down by elders. And these consecrated items are either cottonwood root, a satchel with uh, designs, uh, sacred signs, designs and stuff. And these are all forms of a way to ward off skinwalkers and whatnot. But I don't think there's a like I guess like a basic guide of warding off skinwalkers today. But but yeah, they are out there.
yeah. It sounds like they're kind of in the wilderness away from people. So they generally would not be found like in a city, or would they be found outside the reservation? I suppose they would if there's, other tribes. They'd have them as well. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't find them in the middle of a city or anywhere like that. It would generally be a lonesome,
Uh,
isolated place.
Depending if like how the Tohono O'odham Nation is built around and centered in the middle of Phoenix, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
Um, Back then, they had, I guess you'd say, there's like long lost sacred sites and stuff like that, sites that had meanings and stuff. Uh, those actually leave residual energy type things because so
Okay.
many people back in those days before it was destroyed or made for housings and stuff, people probably made offerings in those places. Natives, ancient natives, I guess you would say,
Uh-huh.
probably went to those places and made offerings.
Right.
I
So
think skinwalkers could probably pick up on that sensitive residual energy and those ancient offerings and stuff of how like the land was consecrated if it was just used for prayers and type stuff.
okay.
And I wouldn't doubt, yeah.
So the energy of the place would be more of a way to tell, rather than, how many people live there, or the landscape, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And our Navajo stories too were back then they used to find them in cliff edges or buttes.
Oh,
Uh,
uh-huh.
I guess you would say cliffs coming out of the ground with caves cut in. They would also find them in crevices, boulder boulder sides, or cliffs with a bunch of boulder sides, volcano cones. We have a bunch of volcano cones here on the Navajo Nation,
Oh, yeah.
like ancient lava tubes and type stuff. Uh, we would also find them around oasis or lake beds, ponds type stuff, anywhere around water basically. And there's a old saying that from the Paiute and Hopi that the wind tunnels here where I'm at, and there is wind tunnels here that go from Sedona, and they spread out kind of I guess like you would say like a web type. They would they come out of the or the wind tunnels when they go across the land. They have openings that come out,
Uh-huh.
and there's one near Flagstaff, Arizona, north of Flagstaff, Arizona, called the Wupaki Wind Tunnel. And depending on air pressure in the atmosphere, if it's heavy enough, it sucks air in, and if it's light enough and it's windy, probably say Sedona, because you're going uphill, going up elevation, and all that wind is hitting the elevation cliff sides in Sedona, that the tunnels would blow air out. The
Oh.
spouts would blow air out.
Uh-huh.
And Paiutes and Hopis believe these wind tunnels go for hundreds of miles across the Southwest. And Paiutes in the Havasu tribe in the Grand Canyon, they have stories of people taking journeys in these caves, going hundreds of miles across the land, and popping up somewhere, probably, I guess you would say Mexico, probably somewhere in the Midwest, the
Oh, wow.
Rocky Mountains.
Uh-huh.
And my belief is that these skinwalkers probably know where these ancient wind tunnels are, and they probably used them in some sort of way to travel across the land. And that's, yeah. The Hopis also believe that they use these too, to use these wind tunnels. Because on their Hopi reservation, some of their villages are built at the end of these wind tunnels. And where these wind tunnels end, they also have I guess you would say, underground wells, underground springs inside of them.
Uh-huh.
And if you ever been to Antelope Canyon, do you know what Antelope Canyon is?
I've heard of it. I haven't been there, but I've heard of it,
If
yeah.
you ever see, yeah, if you ever see the pictures of how the wind carves out the side walls,
Uh-huh.
they have these, they have these underground, and they are they are they are actually pretty,
Wow.
but they say they go hundreds of miles too, out in no directions and type stuff.
Uh-huh.
But the Hopis protect these entrances very well. They don't allow very much visitors, even for themselves. They don't try to venture in. I
Mm-hmm.
guess most times they're only used for ceremonial purposes and type stuff. But there are wind tunnels like that have a big openings, like Antelope Canyon. You could walk in.
Oh,
It's pretty
wow.
nice though.
Yeah, the pictures I've seen of it are just absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, that's really interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Michael Lockhart Bear says near water like missing 411. Are you familiar with the 411 series of books and all of that?
Yes, actually, someone recently brought it up to me on the Reddit page,
Uh-huh.
and they asked if I knew if I can find any connection between it. And I thought about it for a while, and the stories the Apaches tell is there's beings, these sacred beings, I guess you call them water deities or water beings
Uh-huh.
that live around uh, beds of water, any type of water, either it be a well, a stream, uh, a dried up riverbed, or a lake. That these beings would come out of the water, and they would take these people because it's, I guess, in some way they're supposed to have a purpose to be there,
Mm-hmm.
and if that purpose is not met, they are allowed to take them. But Hopis have not Hopis Apaches have several stories of these beings are why these beings are around these lake beds. And um, there's I guess you call it like a gossip that long ago a child went missing out there in White Mountain Apache reservation. That the family went to a medicine man, and this medicine man went out to where the last child was last seen. And as they as the medicine man went about, they got really foggy, like just really bad weather that they had to stay in their ride. And after a while, this medicine man came back out with the child, and
Oh,
people,
wow.
I guess you would say, at the time in that small community, were kind of scared that this happened because they knew about these beings, but they
Mm.
weren't at the time very common for them. But this medicine man brought this child back out, and there's a story, I guess more of a rumor that goes that this medicine man spoke to aliens,
Okay.
something not of this world, and he
Right.
made an offering. Yeah, he made an offering to bring this child back.
Sorry, let
I
me
guess.
get rid of that.
I guess
Yeah.
the offering they accept is in return for a reason why the person should be brought back. I guess it's like a negotiation type thing of why
Mm-hmm.
the child should be brought back and type. And yeah, this medicine man, the medicine man brought back the child, and it's been told to me by my parents too as a gossip, so I don't go wandering around playing out there,
Right,
get
right.
lost. Yeah, it's kind of like a child story to keep them disciplined.
Right, to keep them safe. To keep them safe.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me. I've done a few videos on what I call the the fairy theory of the 411, and that kind of falls into it is the belief that there's these creatures that are not quite of this earth, whether they're, interdimensional, multi-universal or whatever, that are causing these because, the fairies back in Ireland and England, they would steal children and all of that. And you can find examples, again, from cultures all over the world that do the same thing. And so, that's really interesting to me that I mean, I guess they would be aliens if they're not from this universe, but yeah, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, the
that's
way we refer to aliens is just, I guess there's many versions of a way to describe them,
hmm
but I guess the most common way would be calling them star beings or uh, beings from the sky type thing.
okay.
That's just a simplification for a way for them to say aliens, if
Right,
because
right.
vocabulary back in those days wasn't very well built, so the only way they could
Yeah.
describe it was a star being, something that
Right.
went up into the sky type thing. Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense. That's just as good as alien, really.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Okay. Let's see. So they are a creature in and of themselves and not particularly human, but humans can become them. Am I getting that right?
Humans can mimic them,
Uh huh.
I guess you would say. Uh, the best way I can explain it is like how uh, how the Japanese have assassins, ninjas type
Uh,
stuff.
okay.
They deal with poisons. They know the art of sneaky death.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the humans are kind of I wouldn't say under the control, but they've
they know how to mimic
right,
the
right. They're kind of
the aspect.
right. They're what it not indebted to the Skinwalkers, but kind of follow under them. Is that the sort of thing?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
there's a bad version of our culture that even I don't know.
Mm.
But there's people out there who know an evil side of our culture, the evil side of songs and stuff.
Uh huh.
I guess that would also play a part if they were a type of assassin or type of ninja type thing.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
there's
Okay.
a story back in a story between the Pawnee and the Sioux in the Crow. A Sioux warrior wanted to marry the chief's daughter, but the only way he could gain the marriage rights was if he went to an opposing tribe to steal all their horses. But once he brought the horses back, the the daughter didn't want to marry him, didn't like him, refused to marry him, and so heartbroken, this warrior put on the gown of I guess you would say uh, like like an like a dark spirit type gown,
Mm-hmm.
poofy headdress, just painted all black, he wanted to kill himself, so he went to another opposing tribe, the Crows, the Crow Indians, and I guess the tribes back in those days were very superstitious.
Uh-huh.
So when he rode up towards the crows and hoping to kill himself, he yelled crazy stuff like "Kill me! I want you to kill me!" And the Crow Indians thought it was an evil spirit trying to just an evil presence of a spirit. So everybody in the Crow Indian tribe, they fled out. They fled from their teepees, their villages, and they fled out into the plains. And this man, the warrior, was wondering why they didn't kill him, and he finally figured out they were scared of him. And I guess that's kind of another example of how a person can try to be a skinwalker. People will probably be scared of someone dressed up like that.
Right. You look like you have evil intent, so yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Even
go ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I
I
was
was
going
about to say, even today for us Navajos, we don't wear headdresses. We don't wear, I guess you would say, what the plain Indians wear. The
Uh-huh.
big poofy headdresses, bear skin, the things that look scary if you were to wear it.
Yeah.
And back in the day, Navajos were scattered, so we would travel between the Colorado mountains and going south towards Mexico between summer and winter. And when we would go to the Colorado mountains, we would see Cheyenne in these big headdresses and the big buffalo horns, the big buffalo heads,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, and that, I guess you could see how Navajos would see that as scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, even if today, if you were to wear it, you could probably scare somebody if you were trying to mimic a skinwalker just to
Oh.
scare somebody.
Most certainly. Any skin you'd throw over yourself and you're moving like not like that animal moves would definitely be frightening. Definitely.
Yeah, just the sight of it would be scary.
It's so interesting that you learn about the cultural differences between the different nations and everything. That's fascinating too. So there's in the now popular culture some things that are related to skinwalkers, like wearing skins or being able to turn into an animal. Is that accurate? And what about the mimicry of different animals or even different people? Is that accurate, do you think?
I think that all comes down to skills. Navajos used to hunt birds, bush birds, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they would become so good at mimicking these birds that they can make them come out of bushes.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it differed on which region you would be. I guess if you were near the mountains, you would start mimicking elk, deer, foxes type things.
Uh-huh.
If you were further into the desert, you'll probably start mimicking bush birds, coyotes, anything for just to survive off, I guess.
Right.
And that's where the inception comes in of that they can mimic animals and type stuff. But it was actually a very common skill back in those days to
Right.
mimic animals for hunting.
An excellent hunting skill. Very useful, I'm sure.
Yeah. Even today, modernly today, it's not very used. So I guess today, even if I were to probably do it to a fellow Navajo, it probably would scare them.
Yeah.
If I were to try to scare them.
Yeah. I could see that. Let's see if anybody's asked any more questions. Janet had asked, let's see. Oh, where was it? Oh, about females being skinwalkers, or witches or white women. I guess that would be more medicine men or shaman, perhaps.
Yeah, we do have a women medicine men too, but
Okay.
it's very rare to run into one.
Oh,
But
really?
there are women who practice our medicine man type culture.
From when I've talked to other people, it seems that the Navajo or the Dene are very equal as far as men and women go. And just listening to your story of the creation that comes through, and somebody said that there's even like inheritance is passed down through the daughters. Do you find that
Yeah,
to be so?
uh, in the way we introduce ourselves, we have four clans, and our
Uh,
mother clan comes first.
oh,
Then it's our
okay.
fathers.
Okay.
And in Navajo culture, too, most of our ceremonies revolve around the how women are, or like how spiritually powerful women are in our culture. Most of our songs are revolved around even the female gender of animals and stuff too.
That's fascinating. That's wonderful. I love that. I do. Um, let's see.
There's an old saying too that back in the day, only a woman in our tribe could declare war.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
thought that was always nice.
That's interesting. That's fabulous. Now I've heard some very interesting things. That some, I guess it's the humans that follow the skinwalkers, have some of them are alone, but some of them have covens. Do you know anything about that, or is that?
Uh, oh, cultist type things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I guess it depends. Uh, Sometimes they fade out. Sometimes people would try their best to mimic what they know based on knowledge and stuff. But sometimes they would fade out. Uh, but generally, nobody usually is outspoken that they are a skinwalker.
right,
They are involved in a cult skinwalker.
right, right. Okay. And I had another
But
thought, and it just left my head. But go ahead.
uh, in this, I guess you would say once. I guess you would say the Satanist cult, the religion.
Yeah,
Once it started trending in the 70s, the 60s, the 80s,
right.
it also started to affect us on here on the Navajo Nation
Oh,
because
okay.
children who were born during, I guess, the 70s, the 80s, who like death metal, just just the drawings, the satanic symbols and stuff.
Right,
Uh, Even for us, I guess uh, they would play with the Ouija boards type stuff.
right, right. Get into all that
Yeah,
occult stuff, and they would explore or try to explore. I'm sure that a lot of the elders were very hesitant to explain the negative things, but they were looking into the occult side of their heritage as well, I suppose.
yeah. Many, I guess you would say they're trying to look for an identity type thing because our culture, some it's, some families they don't know much about their culture now. Some
Right.
families are Christians, Catholics. Most differ off in different types of religion. But when it comes down to trying to uh, the Navajo culture, sometimes children miss that connection
Right.
to be a part of. So they find an outlet, probably like say Satanist cult or Satanist religion type stuff. Yeah,
Well, I hope that they're able to connect to to their histories and to the culture that was, and that it doesn't fade away, because that's it. I think it's important for people to kind of feel where they come from, and
yeah.
so yeah, I hope that's so. Let's see. I'll throw it out if anybody else has any questions at this point. Maybe not. Yeah, yeah. You're right, Bear. It's very like your stories there. Um, okay. Do you have any more to add on that, or any more to tell us?
Uh, have you seen the illustration I've done of the Skinwalker? My
I
personal Skinwalker I seen.
No, I haven't. I don't think I have.
Oh,
Let's see.
if if you go to my profile, I think it's one of the few first posts I made.
Okay.
It's an illustration, and if you look at it, it's very different from how they would be uh, of how they would be depicted.
Let me see
So
if I can.
this,
And now my internet's being slow. There you are. Oh, yes, yes, I did see that one. Let's see. Let me pull that up.
are you able to see my video call end?
I can see you on it. Yeah. Yes, that's the one. I'm trying to pull it up on
Yes.
Reddit so I can stick it on the screen for people.
Yeah, this is the one I saw.
Uh-huh. That's
And
interesting. And it
the
was
zigzags, yeah, the zigzags in Navajo culture, they're usually drawn in black, and that's the for defining aspect of lightning. And the polka dots, they alternated between the colors of red and yellow, and I don't know what those colors mean.
uh-huh.
But I know red around the wrists and red around the ankles is means your connection to the land. But the one I seen was quite bizarre actually.
Yeah.
It had, from it was like a blurry black mass. And if you ever seen a mirage around a hot vehicle, you seen the little waves, the heat waves.
Right.
This, yeah, that came off the whatever these spikes were, the protruding needles.
Okay. So those
And
okay, needles with kind of like wavy.
yeah, it had no definite feature, but from it you could see it was like quills or needles or hair,
Uh-huh.
but it had no definitive head feature or a
Okay.
body feature. It was just a blurry mass, and from it, it was just black in the center mass, and where the head was more of a mirage, blurry black mass too.
Yeah.
But when I'd seen this, it I was in I guess you would call a water barrier, a flash flood water barrier,
Oh,
old
okay.
70s type, old 70s type thing. It fills up with water and it slowly drains out once it overfills. But it's been dried up for a while, and where I seen the Skinwalker is near our cemetery, a local cemetery, and I was with my brother and his friend, and at first I thought it was horses. You know, have you ever a herd of horses running, the
Uh-huh.
heavy galloping, the footsteps hitting the sand? Except uh, it sounded like it was just running in circles, like back and forth. And I wanted to go over the hill to see if it was horses, but my brother told me to stay, and so I stood there, and this galloping stopped for I guess you would say 2 seconds, and my brother pointed, and he kind of cursed out and said, what is that at the end of the tree line?" And I turned around and I seen this running down the hill on all fours.
Oh,
And
wow.
when it ran, it sounded exactly like a horse. And I guess I was kind of dumbfounded at the moment. I
Right.
kind of froze, and my brother ran all the way down to the end of the tree line to see what it was, and he didn't see where it ran off to because it ran so fast. And just by hearing that and seeing how low it was to the ground, I'm pretty sure it probably could run at like at the line of bushes. Probably can run below 2 feet.
Yeah.
So if you ever were out in the desert overlooking the desert land with bushes, it would probably be hard to try to see one of these.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be That would be. And it had hands and feet like you're showing there. Wow.
Yeah, it had hands, and from what I saw, it had the foot. The foot was more elongated.
Uh-huh.
I guess you would say it was probably trying to compensate for its long leg to run.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, this is my illustration. I saw this back in 2008, 2009. I
Oh,
was
wow.
really in junior high.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
In the local area too, from my grandpa, he told me before he passed away that he used to tell me stories that there's a local skinwalker. I guess they call it the coyote skinwalker
Mm.
because it's usually found in like a color of like coyote skin and type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of thought this is probably what everybody was probably talking about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's...
this is also seen further south of the town I'm in, probably 40 miles south.
Oh,
It's
wow.
open plain land, kind of like grassland, kind of
Uh-huh.
like the little house on the prairie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The land kind of looks like that. But this has also been seen out there running around. But to them, it's more of just a blurry mass out in the distance, so they
Then,
have no any definitive features.
right, right. And where it's so close to the ground, that would help hide it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, oh, you know, that mirage effect, it almost makes you wonder if it's got some sort of cloaking effect that it's able to do, you know? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I've always speculated on this. Could it be like a human being with a paranormal attachment,
Mm-hmm.
as like the arms and legs, everything a human is, and whatever this fuzzy black mass is around it, it could probably be paranormal, and
Right.
they both somehow know how to coexist with each other.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
thinking whatever this paranormal thing is probably giving the human being of it the powers
The
to
powers.
run on all fours.
So that would kind of go back to what you said about the humans that are trying to gain the powers of the Skinwalker. If they've got some sort of agreement between them to...
Yeah, if they're clear-minded to be only focused on becoming a skinwalker, yeah.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it makes you wonder what kind of person would have that desire to...
To want to do this, connect with the paranormal type stuff.
Right, right.
That's even taboo amongst our culture too.
Uh-huh, yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So have you...
I've asked a Hopi tribe member about this, and he said it's I guess you would say a type of air wind, I guess,
Spirit.
wind deity,
Uh-huh.
wind spirit type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because these pointy protruding thingies they put on their kachina masses too,
Oh, uh-huh.
and that's the connection he made, was that's probably a part of their Hopi culture somehow too.
Right. And I wonder if it was attempting to look like a porcupine. I mean, it kind of reminds you of porcupine quills. I don't know. That's interesting,
Yeah,
though.
it did kind of look like porcupine quills. At the same time, it did look like hair.
Uh-huh. Huh.
With the mirage, it kind of distorted it all. So
Right.
I guess it has the power to give illusion,
Right,
I guess you would
right.
say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, that's another thing about different supernatural beings seen throughout the world. The Fae, they have their glamour that they, can change what you see and so forth. So I love all the parallels that occur throughout the world like that. But yeah, that's...
There's another concept drawing I have here. I did an interview with a man who I guess you kind of say is not a very good influence on the community.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He said one day, while he was intoxicated in his house, someone came and knocked on his door. At first he didn't want to answer because it was late in the night, and he figured they would just go away.
Uh-huh.
But after a few, I guess you would say a few hours, and him just being inebriated, the knock came again. And I'm trying to find that drawing. I have it here. He drew me a picture of what he described when he opened the door because he got annoyed by it. Was a figure, I guess you would say, that had long rabbit ears. And if you ever seen a billy goat or
Oh.
a ram, they
Uh-huh.
have big horns.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
I found
Okay.
it. Yeah, they have big horns, and he said that went behind the big ears and came around behind its neck,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of freaked him out at first. He thought it was a mask,
Uh-huh.
and he asked what it wanted. It didn't say anything. It just put out its hand, just like an offering.
Mm-hmm.
And when he looked at its hand, he seen all the, I guess, something similar to the zigzags I have here, except
Right.
it was a different. Yeah, except the dots were the same too. It alternated in colors. And when he looked at the hand, he finally decided to glimpse down, and from it, he seen kangaroo legs.
Oh.
And at the time, I kind of thought, around here we have uh, what do you, animal sanctuary.
Uh-huh.
A lady had a wallaby, a kangaroo wallaby here.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I
wow.
kind of think the Skinwalker probably somehow or some way probably visited this wallaby to gain the kangaroo legs.
Right.
And yeah, and he said it also had a tail, except the tail kind of differed between the bottom of how a snake looks, the scales on the bottom of a snake,
Uh-huh.
and the tail of a kangaroo.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Oh, it's right here. And this is the drawing he gave me.
Oh, wow. That's quite an amalgamation of different creatures. And
Yeah, and he said where the mouth was, I guess where an animal mouth would be,
uh-huh.
a black mass obstructed wherever its mouth was, and it looked like a cloud to him. He said,
Oh, wow.
but he said it had a coyote definition face,
Uh-huh.
and everything else was his body was human except his legs and his tail.
Oh, wow. That would have been terrifying. That would have been terrifying. And so, did he take its hand or did he shut the door and lock it?
He didn't. He said he didn't. He was too drunk at the time to freak out on it,
Uh-huh.
so he just decided to close the door.
Oh,
And
wow.
he never answered the door after that.
I can imagine. Yeah. Wow. That's terrifying.
I have another concept too. 60 miles east from here is a town called, not 60 miles, probably 50, 40 miles east of here is a town called Cow Springs. And in this area is also a place where they have a bunch of volcano cones, lava tubes, mountains, mountainous terrains type stuff.
Uh-huh.
This person drew out something similar to this, and he told me the same exact thing. This thing knocked on the door, and he opened it, and it offered its hand. Except he freaked out, and he slammed the door, and he prepared to try to shoot it. So when he opened his door again, it wasn't there. But he gave me an artist's rendition too, except he described it as having a. I guess you. Do you know the Egyptian god Anubis?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the deity dog.
Mm-hmm.
He said it looked like a coyote and more of kind of like a skinny face of like the Anubis god. It
Okay.
had pointy, and this time it had pointy ears, like I guess like you would say like a coyote or a wolf or the Anubis god.
Uh-huh.
But this is his rendition drawing of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I can. And that's interesting because the horns on this kind of look like the Egyptian headdress, too, of
Yeah,
Anubis. That's interesting.
you can see how both are kind of really almost similar too.
Yeah, very much so. Very much
Yeah,
so.
and but this person wasn't inebriated. He saw enough detail to see that it had a red mark on it around its hips,
Mm-hmm.
and it had zigzags going all the way down its legs. Except he said it looked like if you ever seen a diamondback snake, how it has diamonds.
Oh, uh-huh.
He
Yeah.
said he said on the inside part of the triangles, it looked like the snake scales, and on the
Wow.
outside where the thighs are, he said it looked like I guess a wool, animal wool.
Oh, that's
But he said the
interesting.
animal, this thing was real naked though, and I didn't want to draw.
You
He didn't want to draw
didn't
the
want to get too graphic.
yeah. But he said it had a tail too. In the low income housings we have around here, we
Mm-hmm.
call them NHA housings. They all have similar concepts to save money.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they all have a little doorway before you get to the actual front door.
Oh,
There's
uh-huh.
like a little yeah, it's like a little opening doorway and stuff.
Okay, like a little entryway sort of thing. That's
Yeah, each of them
interesting.
have a bench. Each of them have benches on the right side or the left side too.
Okay. All right. Interesting. And the fact you were able to find two people that had the same encounter, it makes you wonder
Yeah,
how many people out there have encountered this thing. I mean, it's going out and it's seeking out people. It's knocking on the door. That's
yeah.
interesting.
Sometimes sometimes people would be kind of scared that they seen this that they would type it out on social media, and sometimes I would document that
Yeah.
too, since they're just bringing out their personal experience, and I might as well document it. But people do say they see a kangaroo type thing, kangaroo legs, kangaroo tail
Mm-hmm.
with the person on it. Um, the town I'm in too, we have a tiny pond, I guess you could say, and a lady who kind of does who goes to punk shows and stuff. She said one time she was walking by this pond and she seen a centaur and
Oh, wow.
half man, half horse.
Uh-huh.
And I've always thought of that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
centaur.
yeah. And the fact that it's such a part of mythology that she recognized right away what it was. Again, this kind of universal thing. That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's there's several unexplained things people see out in the desert too.
Yeah.
There's people who take walks out in the rural lands around the outskirts of our town
Hmm.
say they see a black mass, kind of like bees, just
Oh.
hovering out in the distance like a mirage.
Oh, wow.
It never gets close, and then when they try to get close, it looks like it's getting further away. I've always wanted to try and investigate that too.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. And it kind of ties in again with the thing you saw with the kind of mirage thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting. Wow.
but I guess most paranormal I document are I most people are living in the outskirts
Oh,
of
yeah.
the town. I guess that's where most activity in our town comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder I wonder how much technology has to do with that. Looking again at the Fae, they're repelled by iron, so technology would kind of push them away. And it makes you wonder if it's the same with these creatures out there and different things, that they're more on the outskirts.
Yeah, I believe people who probably do
Oh, I think you froze. Or I did. That would be bad. Can you all still hear me? Hello?
You don't close the
Same with the...
doorways. These doorways,
Uh-huh.
they leave empty vessels. I guess you would say out
Oh.
there in the out there in the outskirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think whatever these negative things are these empty vessels probably trying to find a way to close these portals or something.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
just trying, or either they are feeding off this just turmoil, basically.
Right, right. Kind of like the legends you were talking about, kind of just sowing discontent and anything they can. Now, do you have you've heard of Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any insight on that?
Not. I haven't been there personally, other than what I've read.
Uh-huh.
So I really don't know much.
Right. It
But
just
if I did have equipment type stuff, that would probably give more conclusive evidence
right.
to the some of the stuff I want answered.
Yeah. I was a paranormal investigator for years, and oh boy, would I love to get on there and go out there and investigate.
Yeah.
So,
There's
yeah.
a rumor too that that's where Montezuma's gold is buried.
Oh, really? I
That's
hadn't
what
heard that.
Yeah, that's what these elders say. We
Uh-huh.
have stories. There's some stories seeing the people from Aztec coming up this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, they're even amongst the Hopi stories too.
Mm-hmm.
That these people with shiny stuff came
Yeah.
up north to invade to evade invaders down there. But there's like very scarce, probably scarce, not a scarce to rare of where they went. But definitely they did pass through the western Navajo Nation part.
Right. Hmm. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Oh. Hmm. Yeah, what I've heard of Skinwalker Ranch was that there was a war between the Navajo and I believe these that were up there. And that somehow a
Yeah,
portal was opened and that's where all of this crazy stuff is coming from. So,
yeah. Back in the day, our relation with surrounding tribes wasn't going very well
mm-hmm.
because Navajos back in the day, I guess you would say they were kind of raider type tribe.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, so we're kind of on like bad terms and stuff. But it is said though that someone did put a curse. The Navajos say the Utes did, and the Utes say Navajos did.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And I was on a message board once with and there was a teenager that had come on and he was Ute and lived just right off Skinwalker Ranch and he was talking a lot of crap about it and stuff and then I guess his grandfather sat him down and told him what was going on and he came back and says, I'm not messing with this. I'm not coming back. So, yeah, it's interesting. But
we do
yeah.
have another place similar. I guess you would say similar in a way to Skinwalker Ranch.
Uh-huh.
This place is near Fruitland, New Mexico.
Oh.
It's called Skinwalker Canyon.
Oh, okay.
I think Ghost Adventures actually covered it.
Oh, did they? I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, it's Skinwalker Canyon and Upper Fruitland.
Okay.
Two separate episodes, and it's actually kind of the Upper Fruitland episode. The way the paranormal accounts happen is kind of similar to the ways people describe them too here. Knockings on the outsides, hearing voices, whispers,
Oh.
taunts,
Uh-huh.
taunts type thing.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to have to look into that. That's interesting. I hadn't heard of those before. Okay, yeah. That's really interesting. Well, let's see. I think you've covered most everything that I've had questions for. I did talk to somebody a few years ago, and they claimed that one of the cults or covens or whatever had threatened her on Reddit for speaking out about things that had happened to her, and threatened her family that was still living there. That's not a concern for you, I hope, or you haven't experienced any of that.
No, not really. Again, I don't. If there is any covens, it probably is secret.
Uh-huh.
Probably not well outspoken.
Right.
But if it is, it's probably younger generation, probably people a little older than me. But
Yeah.
I know elders, they don't deal with coven type things, cultist type things.
Right, right, right. Just your basic trolls, I suppose.
Yeah. It does sound scary when they say all those other stuff, what they can do to you. It does sound scary,
Right.
but again, it comes out to superstitions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been so awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this interview, because this has just been absolutely fabulous. If you guys want to follow him, he's got stories, he's got more pictures. His username on Reddit is LateCap, both capitalized, LATE, capital CAP 3. And he's got stuff out there on the Skinwalker subreddit. And hopefully we'll see a lot more from you.
Yeah, I'm slowly bringing out more information, collective information I have.
Well, I'm definitely interested on anything more that you find out. So, yeah, I will be sure and follow you on that. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And thank you, everybody who showed up, and for everybody who will watch this later, because this was really great. I'd like to do this again. So, anyway, thank you, my darling.